They simply copied and pasted the same excuse verbatim, as if I wouldn't notice, without even trying to lie well. I'm 32-year-old Nathan, and I've never been the kind to be the focus of attention. I've always been the guy who shows up quietly, pays the bill, picks up your dry cleaning when you forget, and somehow manages to be the designated driver to every family gathering, even ones that weren't meant to be events. The golden child wasn't me. That was Tasha, my cousin. Or my brother Owen, perhaps. Or, to be honest, the person with the most outrageous drama that month. When the rent was due or someone wanted to use my Netflix, they all appreciated that I was the person they could rely on. The transition from being a member of the family to merely serving as the financial safety net that was sewn under their chaotic existence was incredibly subtle. At first, you don't notice it. They're having difficulties right now, so you decide to support them because that's what families are meant to do. All of a sudden, everyone has plans, except for you, when your birthday arrives. I started it by sending a message to the family group chat 2 weeks prior. Hey, I'm considering hosting a little birthday dinner. Next Friday, just a table at Amici's. If you can make it, please let me know. I even volunteered to pay for it. That wasn't a surprise. The bill was always paid by me. Years ago, they had ceased to even reach for their wallets. Slowly, the responses came in, primarily in the form of thumbs-up emojis or the traditional comment from my mother, "I'll try to be there," which was code for, "I won't, but I don't want to argue about it right now." My Aunt Rhonda and her husband Paul were the only confirmed visitors by the day of the event. Even so, Rhonda had texted the previous evening, saying, "We'll see you then, sweetie, if Paul's gout doesn't act up." I ought to have anticipated it. However, I foolishly continued to dress up. My finest shirt was ironed. The large table was reserved. We would be at least 10, if not more, I informed the hostess. She put me close to the window with enough place settings to convey optimism and gave me a courteous smile. I sat by myself drinking water at 6 o'clock. The first message came around 6:15. My brother gave it to me. "Something came up, dude. We will rejoice at a later date." After reading it once, I read it twice. There was something strangely impersonal about it. No apology, no explanation, and no genuine attempt. My mom's message arrived 5 minutes later. The same phrasing. Use the same punctuation. "We'll celebrate later." Something came up. My uncle comes next. Next is my cousin. One by one, as though in unison. I gazed at my phone, seeing the progression of apathy like a sluggish assembly line. I remained. Ordered a spaghetti dish that I had no desire to eat. I told the server that I would wait a little while longer in case other people arrived. Nobody did. The bill was paid by me. Left a generous gratuity. Left the restaurant carrying a plastic bag full of leftovers and a silent rage that doesn't explode. It becomes frozen. Brings everything to a halt. Numb. By that time, the parking lot was largely deserted. With the engine running, I sat in my car and scrolled aimlessly. That's when I noticed it. The narrative on my cousin Tasha's Instagram. She's holding a party hat over her French bulldog in a boomerang. Nibbles. Caption. Nibbles. Happy Bark Day. They were all there. Eating a piece of cake while laughing. Owen, my brother. Assisting with the dog's collar bow. My aunt. Holding a flute of champagne. The same folks who experienced a problem. Every one of them was present. For a canine. How long I sat there is a mystery to me. My hands started moving by themselves at one point. I launched the banking app. I clicked on my mom's place's scheduled rent transfers. My brother's. Short-term. Plan for repaying the loan. The phone bill autodraft for my aunt. The one I had been covering ever since she had to cancel her credit cards due to a hack. I canceled each and every one. I then accessed the dashboard for the utility. Gas. Strength. Water. Off. Not right now. But there would be silence when they woke up in the morning. Not the quiet sort, either. Lastly, I removed the extra car key from its ring on my dashboard. It was for the used Audi that Owen owned. He was getting back on his feet, so I co-signed for it. After putting it in my jacket pocket, I turned off my headlights and drove home. The streets were silent and dark. I didn't message you. I remained silent. I didn't inquire why or send an angry text in the group conversation. I waited for the silence. I gave them room to speculate. My phone buzzed in the morning after that. Next, Owen. Then Tasha. Everyone is phoning. I didn't respond. The question, "Is there a problem with the utilities?" exploded in the group conversation. "Are you awake, Nate? Did your autopay get messed up by the bank?" And then my brother's particular fave. "What's going on, bro?" Nibble's gathering was somewhat impromptu. "You're going overboard. Going overboard." The word caught in my throat like that. My mother shared a mysterious Facebook status later that day. For just not being accessible on their timetable, some people will penalize you. Keep in mind that family is unconditional. One passive-aggressive comment from Rhonda said, "Perhaps if you appreciated him, he'd still pick up the phone." It received 4 likes. I didn't respond. Not quite yet. Rather, I began examining the other names that were associated with me. Whose name appeared on the insurance documents? The memberships to the gym. The registration of the vehicle. I came to a realization. I wasn't related to them. Their infrastructure was me. Their walking, talking, utility covering, rent-paying system. And I was going to vanish. My phone came back on that night. It was more than just calls and texts this time. Voicemails were the source. Lengthy ones. Ones that ramble. Some people are upset. A little begging. The first line of the one my brother left was, "Look, man," then descended into an introspective rant about how I had always kept money out of the family's reach. As if being accountable somehow turned me into a bad guy. My mother left 2 messages. The first was gentle. "Too sweet. Nathan. Sweetheart. You're not like this. You are loved by all of us. Don't do this, please. Give me a call." The tone of the second, 2 hours later, was different. "I have no idea what sort of resentment you harbor. Punishing your own mother, though? It's a new low. Even for you. A new low. For myself." I didn't respond. I was unable to. Not quite yet. I needed time to think. To prevent an emotional reaction. I didn't want to simply cut the connection for once. I wanted to make it public. Over the years, they had wrapped every twisted wire around me. Every phony favor. Every fictitious crisis. And perhaps, just possibly, I wanted them to remain in the dark long enough to understand how little they had merited the authority I had granted them. I therefore created a list. Simple things were the first. "My phone plan has been cancelled." Not even a warning from me. After logging in and selecting Remove User, I watched as the email confirming my action arrived. At the dog park, I pictured my cousin Tasha refreshing Instagram and then abruptly losing connectivity. Before realizing his phone was off, my uncle was shouting into it. My sibling? Yes, he would most likely attempt to place the responsibility on the supplier. Owen in the classic sense. Next, the vehicle. I didn't immediately retract it. I gave it to him to sit with. Give it a few more days of driving. Experience normalcy. Then, on Saturday night, I pulled into his driveway, parked a block away, and drove off with it in a composed manner. The spare key was still functional. Not even the latch was on it. His second car, which he never drives since it lacks a taillight, has a sticky note that I placed on its windshield. Think of this as a budget cut because I'm just a wallet. By Monday, the anxiety started to seep into public performances from private texts. Owen made a Facebook post. Loyalty is what family is. However, it seems that this holds true until you surpass everyone else in income and suddenly feel superior to us. Naturally, he didn't tag me. Cowards seldom do. However, the commenters were well aware of who he was referring to. Some even gave the post a like. His girlfriend made a remark. "Babe, you deserve better." Better than what? A brother who covered your expenses? Who paid to relocate you 3 cities away? When you were unable to pay for insurance, who paid for your medical bills? I didn't answer. I sent the landlord an email instead. Actually, my mother's landlord. She had been residing in a duplex that I truly owned. However, for legal reasons, The lease had been in my name. Handshakes have long been the norm. No rent, she said, just help your family. I did for 4 years. Covered upkeep, taxes, and even sporadic repainting. I did send the email, though. This is formal notice that, unless she wants to start paying fair market rent right away, the current tenant has 30 days to leave the property. I've included the most recent account details for payment, pictures of the property, and a proposed rental agreement. Not even a copy was sent to her. It would find her, I knew. Yes, it did. According to the irate email I got from her with the subject line, "Wow, it was within 48 hours. Really? Indeed. Actually. After years of them swarming around me, certain that I would never sweat again, it was like prodding a beehive. All of a sudden I was mean. Callous. Going overboard. In an attempt to change the story, my mother, brother, and cousin all had different versions of the same incident. That I was leaving them behind. That I had evolved. That I was penalizing them for a single error. One error. It's funny, because I couldn't find one when I went back over old texts. Hundreds of them. It wasn't only my birthday. I had just opened my eyes for the first time. When Owen started a new job, then quit 3 weeks later to pursue cryptocurrency, they asked me to co-sign for his car. When Tasha uploaded selfies from a weekend spa getaway, she begged me to pay for her veterinarian's bills because Nibbles is like my kid. When I sent her money without even asking questions, my mother contacted me in tears because the water had been cut off again. Each time I didn't inquire. Each time, I filled the void with trust and felt exhausted. What's the worst? The guilt. The silent, ongoing fear that I would be the villain if I stopped lending a hand. Perhaps I was being self-centered. That perhaps I was the issue. However, as I stood in my apartment's dim hallway, my phone vibrating with calls I was no longer required to answer, I came to a realization. Only when you think you owe them something does guilt function. I didn't. No more. A knock on the door occurred just as everything was beginning to calm down. Not too loud. Simply be steady. Rhythmic. I took it open. Owen was standing in the corridor. His hoodie was half-zipped, and his eyes were bloodshot from stress rather than tears. He trembled a little as he held his phone in one hand. He said, "You took my car." "No, hello. Don't apologize. That's all." I rested my weight on the doorframe. "My automobile, technically. But continue." His jaw dropped as he gazed at me. "Man, this isn't how you make things better." It nearly made me chuckle. Make things better? Do you mean how you all hosted a party for an actual dog after lying and abandoning me on my birthday? The plan was not to do that. According to Tasha, there would only be a small group of people and... Save it. I interrupted. You had the option to call. You didn't. You could have sent a genuine text. You didn't. You had the option to arrive at Amici's. You didn't. However, since the gravy train went awry, you now want us hot. He winced. Excellent. He gave his temple a rub. Look, we made a mistake. I understand. To make a point, however, you don't have to destroy everything. I gazed at him. No, I replied. I'm not required to. I'd like to. I closed the door after that. I realized, however, that everything was not yet over. By no means. Because they were desperate now. And those who are desperate, they begin taking actions they can't reverse. Owen didn't make the following move. My mother gave it to me. A large envelope appeared in my mailbox 3 days after that knock on my door. Just my name written in familiar cursive, with no return address. There was a letter inside. Written by hand. 2 pages. A faded photograph of me, perhaps 5 or 6 years old, beaming with a birthday cake in front of me and my mother standing behind me, her hands on my shoulders like a picture-perfect parent, was at the bottom of the second, folded with forced perfection. I don't know when you had this sick, Nathan, but I miss my son, began the letter. It went on to include a detailed account of my early years. How much she gave up. How she put in extra hours to purchase that bike for me. How she only ever asked for love and understanding in return. She wrote on how difficult it was to raise boys by yourself and about losing your father too soon. The pivot then happened just as planned. Nate, you always seem to get it. That was your unique quality. It was you who was strong. You never voiced any complaints. You just made a difference. You were always helpful. It stung more than I thought it would. Since she was correct. I was helpful. Not out of strength, though. Out of duty. Fearful. Beyond the depths. Distorted notion that no one else would bear their burden if I didn't. Even worse, they might not have valued me unless I did. I hope you find your way back to this family before it's too late, she wrote as she concluded the letter. You are still loved by us. Even if you've lost the ability to love us in return. It was a gilt grenade bound with a bow of martyrdom and wrapped in nostalgia. And for just a moment, I sensed that it was working. The old strings tugged at me. I then took another look at the picture. I didn't remember that one. Because I remember crying at the conclusion of that birthday. My cake broke. Since I received the larger gift, Owen had flung it off the table. What about my mother? I made a scene, so she reprimanded me. The only positive aspect of that day was that picture. Before the shouting began, there was a free frame. Now a moment weaponized to control me. That was the pivotal moment. I packed the picture and message and left them on her porch the following morning, unopened. Unfolded. Not a word. Nothing but quiet. Go back to the cinder. And that quiet was short-lived. Because they escalated the next week. Someone was dispatched to Octomy. Ambushed me, that is. It's more like that. It happened during my lunch break on Thursdays at a nearby cafe that I used to frequent. In hindsight, I should have modified my regimen, but I hadn't. I heard a voice I hadn't heard in years while reading a book and enjoying an Americano. A book. You're still acting like you're too intelligent for the rest of us? I raised my head. Uncle Darren was there. You know the kind if you've ever encountered someone who was able to blend sleaze with a sense of entitlement so strong that it ought to be marked with a caution. Because Darren borrowed money that he never returned, half of the family had cut him off. He usually slithered back in during drama, though, for some reason. Similar to a vulture circling a new injury. Without asking, he pulled out the chair across from me and settled in as if we were old friends catching up. I advised them against sending a letter. Nate is a man, I said. You speak directly to men. But, your mother has a tender heart. You were reared by that woman. I didn't respond. I simply gazed at him. Be calm. Nothing. My silence was an invitation for him to go on. You're hurting people who care about you, but I'm not sure what kind of tantrum this is or what they said to make you so angry. Youngster. Your mother is a complete mess. My couch is where your brother is sleeping. Are you going to continue like this? I blinked slowly. Did you come here to mention that part? Or is the guilt trip only an added benefit? He smirked a little less. He said, I came because I care. But Nathan, you're going to be completely alone if you continue in this direction. Family doesn't do that. I bent over. No, I replied. Family is precisely like that. At least my family. Pretends that love is quiet. Pretends that connection is obligation. Pretending to be guilty is money. His mouth twitched as he sat back. He murmured, I'm not the terrible person here. I told you that you were never even mentioned in the story. He didn't go away quietly after picking up my cup. He stormed out, huffed, and muttered something under his breath before knocking over the creamer tray. The barista looked at me. With a shrug, I went back to reading. However, it wasn't the end. That was only a sneak peek. Because my bank sent me a notification 2 days later. There has been an attempt to access my account. But then again. And once more. Requests for password resets. No access. I made all the changes. Locked everything shut. I flagged every account in my name after contacting my bank. These were the people I had grown up with. When things became inconvenient, I was aware of how desperate they could get. Then the text arrived, confirming everything. From Owen. Do you believe that you are superior to us? All right. Just keep in mind the person who changed your diaper. Who gave you food? You owe everything to this family. Additionally, avoid sobbing when your mother leaves. I gazed at the display. For a long time. The final line, that was it. They always used that line to make me feel guilty about returning. It wasn't merely a warning when Mom was gone. It was dangerous. They still believed they could control me. I still believed that love entailed debt. I still believed that I could be intimidated into going back. However, this time, I wasn't leaving this time. I was cutting them out this time. And there wouldn't be any space for a comeback the way I would do it. No miscommunication. No martyrdom on Facebook in public. They were going to experience what life was truly like without me. Owen's message went unanswered by me. Not via text. Not over the phone. Not even with a word. I went to the financial management program I use for my consultancy instead. It was the same one where I had created all of the family-linked accounts, emergency transfers, and recurring payments. I had family support folders with subcategories named after the persons I was assisting for years. Mom's utilities. Owen's car. Pet emergencies in Tasha. What began as temporary assistance gradually evolved into long-term lifelines. They never inquired as to when it would end. They simply thought it wouldn't. I erased the entire folder that day. I wasn't finished, though. I prepared my last move throughout the course of the following week. No act of retaliation. It wasn't a spectacular explosion. Something sanitized. It's obvious. Everlasting. My mother lived in a duplex that I sold. I was solely responsible for that. Years ago, once I got my first big client, I bought it. I offered it to her as a short-term residence while she recovered from a poor investment. However, there was never any intention of leaving. Never bring up the topic of rent. Never a thank you gesture. I was fed up with maintaining the place, which had become into a monument to her entitlement. She was not evicted by me. A development company that was purchasing half of the neighborhood purchased the entire property from me. They received far more than the going rate. They didn't inquire. I closed, signed, and let things unfold naturally. She received the notice from the new owners 2 weeks later. I anticipated a storm. For 3 full days, I was left in complete silence. The voicemail then arrived. She didn't shout. She didn't cry. She spoke in a chilly tone. Managed. That's it, then. You're ignoring me as if I don't exist. As if I hadn't brought you up. My house was sold by you. During a birthday meal? She didn't express regret. The lies were not mentioned. The dog party. Years of coercing me into paying for their lives as my own silently dwindled in the background. No, I had just betrayed her, in her opinion. The unimaginable. I had made my own decision. The part she couldn't forgive was that, like all the previous voicemails, I left that one unanswered. I wasn't finished yet, though. I separated all of my legal ties to them by filing documents. No more accounts with co-signers. No more joint plans. I also changed my life insurance beneficiary, which I hadn't considered until I noticed that Owen was still named in case of emergency. I returned the automobile to him and donated it. Not marketed. Made a donation. In any case, he had already destroyed the interior. I changed the phone number. Fresh SIM. New carrier. I gave 3 folks my new phone number. My closest companion. My supervisor. As well as my therapist. I then made a move. Not that far. Enough. A new address. A brand new structure with a security gate. Access is restricted unless you are buzzed in. About it, I didn't post. Didn't make the announcement. I simply slipped out of their grasp. It was not warmly received by them. Clearly directed at me, my cousin Tasha attempted to share a string of Instagram tales about toxic relatives who lose their sense of origin. She was cradling a sobbing snack in one of the pictures, which said, "He doesn't understand why Uncle Nate doesn't love him anymore." It nearly made me chuckle. Owen went farther. He attempted to ask a common buddy to forward a message to me. The companion declined. "He owes you nothing," I told him bluntly. But my mother. She avoided public altercations. She resumed writing letters. Once every 7 days. Written by hand. In the same tone every time. It was more like practiced pity than true regrets. She would be gentle at first, then start gaslighting. I didn't mean to offend you. You were sensitive all the time, though. Or I simply hope you don't forget what I did for you. Occasionally, she would add pictures. Older ones. Owen and I as children. She and I during graduation. Constantly grinning. Love is demonstrated through frozen moments. My first letter was destroyed. I tossed the other one away. I completely stopped opening them by the 5th. Then there was quiet. No letters. No phone calls. Not even a try. I felt what it was like to breathe without guilt weighing heavily on my chest for the first time in my adult life. I returned to going to the gym. After not writing for years, I started to write. I worked as a volunteer for a non-profit organization that assists young adults transitioning out of foster care. The ease with which I handled spreadsheets and finances astounded them. I kept my skill at resource stretching and budgeting a secret from them. It no longer mattered. I didn't see one of them in public for 3 months. Owen. He was standing outside a strip mall, noisily conversing on the phone with someone. He appeared thinner. Older. He had scratches on his sneakers. His vitality was fragile. He saw me just as I turned to leave. He merely gazed for an instant. Then he approached me. Not quickly. Not combative. Simply exhausted. He said, "Hey." I remained silent. He cast his gaze downward. "Really, you're gone?" But I remained silent. He stopped himself. I just... Ignore it. He turned to go. Then he stopped and glanced over his shoulder again. "Mom still checks the mails, you know. I'm hoping you'll leave something in one of those envelopes." Then I looked at him. Glanced closely. The final words I would ever say to any of them were said. Everything I had to offer was already given to her. He didn't answer. Just a single nod. And turned to leave. That was the end of it. No great reconciliation had place. No big moment in the courtroom. There was no apology that made everything suddenly forgiven. Free at last, just myself. Embarrassed and invisible, I sat by myself in a restaurant on the last birthday I spent with them. When was the first birthday I didn't have them? I had 3 video calls from folks who genuinely cared while I sat in my new apartment and ordered my favorite takeaway. Not guilty. No show. Just tranquility. And I became aware when I shut down my laptop. It wasn't difficult to leave. It involved acknowledging that I ought to have done it a very long time ago.